The key to life is not always being right. The key to life, or at least one of them, I feel, is being able to admit when you are wrong. Because it is when you are wrong, when you make mistakes, that you can ultimately learn and get better and grow and improve. And if you are always right, A, you're not. B, you're either insecure or uncomfortable with the vulnerability that comes along with being wrong. And C, most importantly of all, you're potentially staying in a comfort zone built in your own bubble of BS that prevents you from learning and growing and improving and actually achieving your true potential. I say all of that to say before the season, I did not believe in the San Francisco 49ers at all, and I was flat out wrong. And I should have been better. I should have known better, and I did not. So there's that. Because I wasn't really seeing where as a team that needed help, I felt more so on the offensive side of the ball, was so heavily loading up on the defensive side of the ball, and in particular the front four. This is a team that had previously spent first-round picks on Eric Armstead and DeForest Buckner and Solomon Thomas in 3 straight years. Now you come into 2019, they're trading for Dee Ford, and they're spending the second overall pick on MAGA man Nick Bosa. And I was just wondering, like, yeah, this is great. And Bosa maybe makes up for Solomon Thomas being a bit of a bust. You look at this and you say, okay, you've so heavily invested in this one area, this one portion of your overall team, that if they don't play at absolute beast peak level at all times, it's going to catch up to you in other areas. Especially when you're talking about a team that had questions at the quarterback position, when you have talk about Jimmy Garoppolo recovering from the torn ACL he suffered early in the 2018 season. And you could say, well, he was whenever he's starting it, usually went blah, blah, blah. There still were questions, and there had to be questions. Now, if you're a 49ers fan and you want to say to yourself, I didn't have any questions, then you were just living in a bubble of denial. You were basing it off of a limited sample size that could be easily manipulated to fit your needs one way or another. But having questions does not automatically make you believe that the guy is going to be a bust or the guy isn't the guy. You can have questions and then you wait to see if those questions are effectively answered or not, one way or another. But to me, there were too many questions here and too many concerns here. Like, where was the production in the running game going to come from? Who the hell was going to catch the ball other than George Kittle in that offense? How was Jimmy G even going to play? Sure, you have Richard Sherman and you have Fred Warner, but what else did you have in the back end of that defense to complement that fantastic front four that you were going to have? Got my answers, didn't I? They got off to an 8-0 start to the season, and were looking pretty good doing so, although it felt like they were beating up on a lot of less than great teams. But 8-0 in the NFL is 8-0 in the NFL, especially the way that defense was dominating the first half of the season with no games of allowing more than 20 points. Like, you could envision them right there, and you're looking at them and you're saying, that is a Super Bowl caliber defense. I don't know if that's a Super Bowl caliber team, but that certainly is an impressive elite level defense. That is a Super Bowl level constructed defense. Hard to deny it. And even when you look at the way the season ended up playing out after that 8-0 start, you got a tough loss to Seattle. That was by 3 points. You had a tough loss to Baltimore in less than ideal conditions, and they played them really tight, facing off against a really hot team with their own elite defense. And by the way, the league's most valuable player, Lamar Jackson. And then even the Atlanta game was a tough last-second, last-play loss type of deal that sometimes, unfortunately, happens in the NFL. So there are no really, truly horrible performances by this team during the regular season. The losses that they had were close and squeakers and so forth. You look at them and you say, man, you start to wonder. But even when you got to week 17, obviously Seattle is a tough matchup for them. They managed to squeak by and beat the Seahawks, which was so important, I feel like, for the 49ers. Because if they don't win that game, they don't get the number 1 seed. They don't get a bye. And I don't think they make the Super Bowl. And maybe the Seahawks do. And they won that game by about that much. When you talk about the razor-thin margins in the National Football League, sometimes it could be a matter of inches, if not centimeters. It's crazy. But they ultimately did win that Week 17 game. And as I looked out into the NFC playoff picture, it's like, okay, they had that great game, that high-scoring game against the Saints during the regular season that they won after Kittle made that great play late in the game, put them in field goal position. The Saints can maybe beat them, and then obviously the Seahawks can beat them. I don't see how anybody else in the NFC is going to beat the 49ers. It's one of those two teams that can really contend with them, and that's it. But the 49ers were the ones that had the number one overall seed. It had to go through them, and it did. They got helped out a lot when the Saints lost to the Vikings in the Superdome in the wild card round. The Seahawks get eliminated by the Packers in Lambeau in the divisional round. All the while, the best thing the 49ers could do was handle their business, which is what they certainly did against the Vikings. They had a great day on the ground, dominated that way offensively, just imposed their physical will on that Minnesota Vikings front seven, and their defense absolutely dominated the Vikings offense, made Kirk Cousins uncomfortable all day. Then they turn around in the championship game against the Packers, pretty much follow the same formula, do the same thing. Before you know it, you're looking at the 49ers going from the number 2 overall pick in the draft, and what did they win last year? 3 games, 4 games, whatever the hell it was, to now they're playing in the Super Bowl. And you got this great contrast of styles, the explosive offense with the next great face of the league quarterback in Patrick Mahomes versus this great, phenomenal front four and pass rush of the San Francisco 49ers defense. Like, they talk about styles make fights, and contrast of styles can make fights. Contrast of styles can make for interesting, compelling games and storylines heading into Super Bowl. And for me, with no real dog in the fight one way or another, I was really looking forward to the Super Bowl. And, the 49ers came out of the gates, and that defense was really, really good in the first 3 quarters. Like, Mahomes didn't look right. He wasn't right. He wasn't at his best, and he wasn't having a great game. And all of a sudden, it's crazy. You're thinking about it, and you're saying, oh, my God. This 49ers team will have been able to largely hide their quarterback, or not, I should say not necessarily hide, but not have to utilize their quarterback all that much, and have been able to sweep their way to the Super Bowl with 3 straight dominant defensive performances. And it looked like it was going to be like that. And then the fourth quarter happened, and they collapsed. That's all you could call it. It was a collapse. It was an absolute collapse. It was a gag job. That defense that had played so well all throughout the playoffs all of a sudden wasn't existent. Allowing big plays down the field to Tyreek Hill and just allowing Mahomes all of a sudden to get into rhythm where he hadn't been good all game. All of a sudden, he's good enough when his team needs him. Meanwhile, on offense, they get away from the running game a little bit, and then Jimmy G has some problems, and he goes from being Jimmy Garoppolo to Jimmy Garbage Pail. And it was really fitting as you looked at that game and the 2 throws that really made the difference. You talk about Patrick Mahomes and the big throw down the field to Tyreek Hill, even though it wasn't a great throw and it floated up in the air quite a bit. Tyreek Hill was so damn open it didn't make a difference. He still had plenty of time to come down with it. Meanwhile, when the 49ers needed a big play down the field late and you've got Emmanuel Sanders open, Jimmy Garoppolo overthrows him by a couple of yards. Like, that was the difference, and that shows you all that you needed to know. The Kansas City Chiefs won because their quarterback, who didn't have a great game and wasn't at his best, still found a way to get it done when it mattered, whereas the 49ers could only go so far with their defense. This should be a lesson for teams around the league in general. It's great to have a great defense. It's nice to have a great defense. It can get you to a certain point, but if anything goes wrong with that defense and you don't have an offense that can step up and take over some of that load and score some points and move the chains when you need it, it's not going to do you any good, and it's not going to result in Lombardi trophies. And that's why the 49ers were Super Bowl losers, and the Kansas City Chiefs, for the first time in 50 years, were world champions. It's because they didn't have enough talent on offense, and specifically at the quarterback position. And 49ers fans, you can kiss my pasty rear. Jimmy G is Jimmy Garbage Pail. And the fourth quarter of that Super Bowl, once and for all, should have exposed that. Now, what are they going to do? Are they going to move on from Jimmy Garoppolo? I don't even know if they can. I'm sure there's an element of them that would love to bring in Tom Brady in the offseason via free agency, but they've only got about $20 million of salary cap space right now. And they probably got some guys like Emmanuel Sanders, Jimmy Ward, Eric Armstead, Matt Breida, Kendrick Bourne. They're trying to bring most, if not all, those guys back in the fold. Like if you're 49ers, you're kind of stuck with what you got and what got you to the dance last year. And if you're a 49ers fan, maybe you feel good enough about that. But you ultimately didn't win the championship. You don't have a lot of draft picks to work with. Sure, you've got your first rounder, 31st overall, which you most likely are going to trade back out of because you don't have a second, third, or fourth round pick. You know, bottom line is not a lot of help going to come in the draft, not a lot of help going to come in the free agency period. What exactly is a Jimmy G going to do to get so much better that's going to make such a big difference here for this 49ers team? I don't see it. The dude is not trash. I call him garbage pail in part just to troll 49ers fans. But believe me, for a guy whose team still stubbornly stands by Mitchell Trubisky, I know what bad quarterbacks look like. And Garoppolo himself is not terrible, but Garoppolo ain't that dude. He's not that dude. And no matter how much you try to convince yourself of the righteousness of your belief that he is, it doesn't change the fact that he's not. He is not that dude. And if the fourth quarter of the Super Bowl didn't expose that to you, I don't know what the hell ever will. Again, to come full circle with what I started this video with, if you are not willing to admit when you're wrong, you will never grow and learn and improve from your mistakes. For the 49ers, they're in kind of a tough spot. They might not have a choice. They might have to ride with Jimmy G again in 2020. As much as anything else, this may be a cautionary tale or advisory for me to 49ers fans. You're not winning a Super Bowl with Jimmy G as your starting quarterback. The quicker you accept it and realize it, the better off life will probably be.